Most child stars fade away, but Ariana Grande chose to go dark. In 2016, she traded the high ponytail and bubblegum innocence for latex masks and cinematic noir, fundamentally changing how we define a pop star. This wasn't just a costume change. It was a calculated weaponization of high-fashion femininity. Before we dive in, this is Curl Pop Culture Explained. Subscribe for more. To truly understand the magnitude of this shift, we have to look closely at the media landscape of the mid-2010s. The pop music industry was trapped in a repeating, almost mechanical cycle. Child stars emerging from mega networks like Disney and Nickelodeon routinely reached a dangerous corporate crossroads. They could either remain trapped in a perpetual state of sanitized youth to satisfy corporate stakeholders, or they could break free using raw shock value. For decades, the blueprint for the rebellion phase was defined by public, chaotic disruption. It was an explosive, often messy shedding of the skin designed to shock middle America, grab headlines, and forcibly distance the artist from their childhood characters. We saw it in the eras that came before. The transition was almost always marked by a deliberate burning down of the old house. But in the spring of 2016, Ariana Grande took a radically different path. She didn't stage a public meltdown, nor did she merely flame her past. Instead, she executed a highly calculated, architecturally precise subversion of her own image. The dangerous woman era was born, and with it, a new standard for how a female artist could transition from child actor novelty to an industry-dominating force. Look closely at the image that defined this entire pivot. The black and white high-contrast cover art wasn't just promotional material, it was a corporate thesis statement. By donning a glossy black latex bunny mask, Grande was playing with a highly sophisticated visual paradox. The bunny, historically a symbol of soft, harmless, and easily consumable innocence, was rendered in a material associated with underground subcultures, high fashion edge, and absolute autonomy. It was an explicit, unvarnished announcement that the girl who played Cat Valentine was officially gone. This wasn't an accidental aesthetic choice born out of a random styling session. It was the deliberate construction of what we now analyze as the dangerous woman aesthetic. It combined old Hollywood vocal reverence, think the timeless, untouchable mystique of classic cinema sirens, with a sharp, modern visual edge. By stepping into this cinematic noir universe, Grande challenged the industry's deep-seated discomfort with young female agency. She proved that an artist could be simultaneously hyperfeminine, immensely powerful, and completely in control of the narrative. This analytical provocation was necessary because the industry in 2016 was highly skeptical of vocalists coming out of teen sitcoms. They were often viewed as products of a machine, devoid of personal identity or artistic direction. Grande's genius lay in her refusal to play the victim of that machine. Instead, she used the visual language of high fashion to position herself as the architect of her own destiny. This section of her career didn't just save her from the dreaded child star curse. It established the blueprint for modern pop maturity, proving that provocation is most effective when it is intellectual, deliberate, and visually seamless. How do you dismantle a multi-million-dollar corporate identity without alienating the massive fan base that built you? That is the core question behind the complex architecture of this rebrand. For years, Grande's identity was strictly bound by her Nickelodeon contract. On hit shows like Victorious and Sam and Cat, she played a caricature of hyperinnocence. A high-pitched, easily startled, bright red-haired teenager whose primary function was to be adorable, comedic, and non-threatening. When she initially transitioned into the music industry with her debut albums, Yours Truly and My Everything, remnants of that corporate policing heavily remained. She was marketed as the sweet, accessible girl next door, a retropop princess who just happened to possess a rare 4-octave vocal range. The aesthetics were bright, pastel, and highly manicured. But the corporate architecture of engineered innocence is a prison with a strict expiration date. If an artist stays there too long, they become obsolete, forever frozen in the twilight of youth. The pivot to Dangerous Woman required a systematic, piece-by-piece dismantling of that specific innocence. The first structural change was visual asset management. In the world of pop branding, an artist's silhouette is their most valuable trademark. For Grande, that trademark was the signature skyscraper-high ponytail. It wasn't just a hairstyle, it was a visual anchor that kept her tied to a youthful, almost cartoonish aesthetic. It was instantly recognizable, highly marketable, and completely safe. During the rollout of the 2016 album, notice how that anchor was systematically modified. The ponytail was lowered, let down, texturized, or entirely obscured by the introduction of the bunny mask. This wasn't merely a casual trip to a stylist. It was a symbolic severing of the invisible ties to her television past. By altering her most recognizable physical trademark, she signaled a profound break from the character she had been paid to portray for half a decade. She was telling the audience that the silhouette they thought they knew was capable of morphing into something far more complex. Furthermore, the introduction of mature, leather-clad imagery served a brilliant dual purpose. It wasn't just about looking older or appealing to a mature demographic. It was about reclaiming power over her own body and image. In the corporate television landscape, young actresses are often treated as objects of a specific, sanitized gaze. By pivoting to high-fashion leather, structured latex, and sharp, imposing silhouettes, Grande seized control of her own visual narrative. She replaced the soft fabrics of childhood with the unyielding textures of adulthood. This visual storytelling did the heavy lifting across the music industry. It communicated clearly to critics, legacy executives, and major institutions that Grande was no longer a pop puppet executing a label's safe vision. She was a serious vocal powerhouse leveraging visual iconography to demand respect on her own terms. The architecture of this rebrand proved that a pop star's image doesn't have to be passive. It can be engineered, brick by brick, to dismantle corporate expectations and build an empire of absolute artistic autonomy. It showed that you don't have to scream to get attention, you just have to change the shape of your shadow. A rebrand is only truly successful if it alters the cultural landscape permanently, setting a new baseline for those who follow. Years later, the ripples of the Dangerous Woman era are still actively defining how pop stars navigate the treacherous transition into adulthood. Before this era, the mainstream music industry operated under a rigid, unforgiving binary. You were either the wholesome, safe pop princess or the hyper-provocative, reckless rebel. There was rarely a middle ground that allowed for world-class vocal excellence and complex, dark visual storytelling to exist in total harmony. Grande's 2016 pivot shattered that binary forever, establishing a new framework of pop autonomy that a generation of artists are still utilizing today. The lasting legacy of this aesthetic lies in its flawless execution. Grande didn't just change her clothes and hope for the best. She drastically elevated her musicality to match the immense weight of her new imagery. Tracks like the title song Dangerous Woman, Into You, and Side to Side fused classic blues-infused vocal delivery with cutting-edge bass-heavy electronic production. It proved to the world that a mature aesthetic wasn't a cheap mask used to hide a lack of musical growth. It was an amplification of a world-class vocalist finally operating at full, unrestricted strength. She effectively taught the industry that an artist can weaponize high-fashion femininity, sensuality, and edge without ever compromising their artistic dignity or their vocal credibility. Moreover, this era completely changed the playbook for corporate transitions for future child stars. It showed a rising generation of talent that you do not have to burn your past to the ground or create public chaos to build a viable adult career. You do not need a public breakdown to prove you are grown up. You can transition with precision, intellect, and a clear, unyielding creative vision. We see the DNA of the Dangerous Woman rebrand in how modern pop icons manage their distinct eras today, treating every single album cycle not just as a collection of radio singles, but as a highly curated multimedia exhibition of their personal and artistic growth. When we look back at the history of pop music, certain eras stand out as turning points where the rules of the game changed. The Dangerous Woman era is undeniably one of them. It elevated Ariana Grande from a highly talented vocalist into a cultural icon whose aesthetic choices carry intellectual weight. She proved that pop music can be both commercial and deeply artistic, both vulnerable and incredibly dangerous. Ultimately, Ariana Grande's post-Nickelodeon evolution proved a vital truth. The most dangerous thing a woman in the music industry can be is completely self-governing. She took the massive, restrictive machinery of child stardom, systematically dismantled it, and used those exact same pieces to build an immutable legacy of pop autonomy. The latex ears, the dark color palette, and the cinematic noir weren't just a fleeting phase. They were the carefully crafted armor of an artist claiming her throne. This has been Curl Pop Culture Explained. Let me know in the comments below how you think this specific era changed the modern pop landscape, and if you think anyone has executed a rebrand better since. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the architecture of pop culture. See you next time.